I'm not laughing.
So this is the first interview that I'm doing on my YouTube channel, and we've got a very exciting guest today. We've got Ashvin Iyer, aka DJ Ash. So Ashwin and I go
Yeah,
back a
Ashvin.
long time. We've known each other for about 30 years. We went to the same college in New Delhi, India. He was a few years ahead of me, but that's not how I met him actually. We met through some music related connections, and he's always been into music. I knew him when he was playing the classical guitar, and through many turns of events, he became a music entrepreneur. And as you can tell from his vest, he's a DJ, not just a DJ, a pretty well-known DJ in a very niche area in Tango. He's a Tango DJ and hosts events all over the country and internationally. So, Ashwin, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself? Did I do justice in that introduction?
Well, it's a good start. So, thanks for having me. I appreciate your time. Yeah, I started well. mm, you and I go back a long ways. I think we were learning classical guitar, and I'm still playing that a little bit once in a while. But yeah, basically my career started the traditional Indian way, which is come to the States for a master's degree in computer science, all very boring and all very predictable. But somewhere during that time, there was some, the US economy was not doing very well. And I had really taken up this interest in Argentine tango. I was dancing a lot and I was going to a lot of local events. And the way this thing all started was one local event that I really liked to go to shut down. They were going out of business. And I thought, well, what better chance than for me to continue. I already had a patron base to start with, so I started my own events. And in the beginning, it was supposed to be just for fun and all, but then after a few months, I really started to get into the job, and I started to get into um, making the event succeed. And fast forward many years, I ran one real event weekly in the Bay Area for over 10 years, along with many other short, small one-time events, and they were all quite profitable. And in the meantime, my career as a DJ also flourished. So currently, I'm an event organizer and a DJ and an entrepreneur in the world of Argentine tango, which is a very particular dance. It's an embrace-based dance. We dance in an embrace, and it's from Argentina. So that's kind of the overall summary of where I am right now.
That's amazing. So I know next to nothing about tango. So is it a lot like salsa or it's completely
Not at
different?
all. No,
Not
it's completely different. Tango is essentially based in a marching 2/4 time signature, and the Argentine tango music is much like the golden age of swing in terms of not in terms of how it sounds, but in terms of the era it was born. The golden age of swing and the golden age of tango are from the 1930s to the 1950s,
Hmm.
and you can easily check out Argentine tango music online in many places now. It's quite a worldwide phenomenon.
Interesting. So of course I know a ton of people like you who came to the US to do their masters, but they stuck masters in computer science, but they stuck to that field. I know literally no one who became a music entrepreneur. So that's very interesting. So let me ask you this.
Thanks.
Let me give it a slightly different flavor. So you did your master's in computer science, and then I know you worked for a bunch of banks that shall go unnamed. So
A number
basically,
of investment managers, hedge funds, yes.
so basically, you're a technical person, right?
Right.
Now, DJing, hosting events, I'm assuming that's still, except for the tech, the stuff that you use to play the music on. Except for that, it's a very low tech kind of business. You rent out a space, you sell tickets. How do you think,
Right.
first of all, is that a right characterization? And how do you think
Um,
and data and analytics, all of that would help you scale what you're doing right now?
well, this is an interesting question, and it's a loaded one as well. And it does. I am in a somewhat unique position as a technical person. in kind of event entrepreneurship. But to answer your first question, yes, it is a little bit less tech intensive. It's mostly stuff that's done based on intuition and instinct. And so the general model of sales is you open a venue, you promote the event among a community of very fixed people. It's just the community of dancers doesn't, it changes over years, but more or less many people go to the same events. And so the goal is to be able to get people to come to your event, and you sell tickets at the door, and you pay the rent on the event, and you kind of make a living like that, which is what I do. So for the second part of that, since I have a tech mindset, one of the things that we do in Tango, there's two different things that I want to talk about in this podcast, or maybe in this episode, I guess. One of them is patronage, meaning how to get people to come to your events, which is essentially every organizer's job is to maximize the number of patrons that come to their event, and that generally defines success. So that's one aspect of it. And the second aspect of it is me as myself as a DJ, and what sort of data points does a DJ require to have a knowledge of or mastery of. So from the data standpoint, if we take the first part, which is the patronage, the goal for us is to be able to maximize patronage. And what happens is the number of people that come to an event generally depends on a number of factors, them being namely whether they enjoy the music, whether they enjoy the venue, whether they enjoy the ambience, are there compatible dancers that they could dance with. So these are the, in terms of patronage, those are the main things that we try to work on. So essentially, from a data standpoint, you could argue that this is kind of maximizing patronage and using these variables such as the venue and the music as your variables to model around. So those are the challenges for event organizers, is to get as many people as possible. And there is a particular thing about partner dance and dance events, which differentiates them from being, the success metric becomes infinitely more challenging, as opposed to, say, if you're at a restaurant. If your food is good, people will come as long as you promote your restaurant. Whereas at an event, people generally go to events where their friends are also going. So there's a certain community connection aspect of it, which I think is a bit difficult to model. How does one, the data challenge we have here is, how does one get people who are friends with each other to go to the same events? And so from a data analyst standpoint, I'd like to ask you, how do you think that something like this could be modeled? And is it possible to model something like this?
I'm sure it is. I don't know how, I would think in terms of a social graph, see who you're connected to. Are they going, if it's a marketing driven approach to getting patrons, then if, on a social graph, if this person's going, reach out to whoever that person's connected to, separated by 1 or maybe 2 degrees of separation, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
somewhat like LinkedIn or 6 degrees.
Something like LinkedIn or 6 degrees, exactly. So
right.
that could potentially inform your sales and marketing strategy, how to attract patrons and the right kinds of patrons, so that there's, like you said, it's not just getting the patrons, it's getting them to act in a cohesive manner while at the venue. So that's just, and I haven't thought this through, obviously.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because the point really being that if you, for example, if you're the event organizer, I'm going to go to your event, you're going to reach out to, you want to be able to market the event to people that I know. Right. So each person's network is as important as your own, which is kind of, maybe it sounds a bit like networking 101, but really the issue is that how to get two people to go to the same event is infinitely more challenging than to get one person at a time. So in terms of group dynamics, you're looking at a group of people.
Yeah.
Not only do you interact with each of them to have them come to your event, they need to interact with each other to do your marketing for you in a way, because that's how word of mouth works.
Right. So let me
Um,
flip this question back to you. So do you see how these, I'm assuming it's a very niche thing. You live in the Bay Area and there couldn't be a very big tango community. It's got to be small. So where do the communities form? Are they online? Do you have a Facebook group or something that where everybody hangs out?
well, Facebook now has a number of groups that involve
Mm-hmm.
Tango event listings. There's also a very rudimentary site based on PHP and HTML, very simply written, called Tango Mango, which is where basically everybody lists their event.
Tango
And
Mango. Did you make it?
I did not, but it was someone similarly minded. Like Tango does attract people in tech. For some reason, there's a certain creative aspect of the dance. There's an improvisation that's needed that seems to lend itself very well to figures, especially if you're a leader in Tango. That I do the leading role. So there's a lot of tech people. So one of those kind souls built a site out of the goodness of their own hearts, and it's been going on since like the early 2000s.
That's
So
interesting. So I'm surprised because those guys haven't solved the problem you're talking about, how to, you know, create some kind of a model that'll insights from which would let you curate a hit event, basically, attract the right kind of patronage.
right, and it's also interesting that in a sense it translates to other walks of life where it's not simply the price
Yeah,
that gets people to go to an event. In fact, people are often willing to pay a higher price if they know the event is going to be attractive to people that they know well.
right.
So yeah, in a sense that there is something to be said about that. So that's where the modeling comes in. And actually, I had a really good idea of this, and uh, it's an example of how discounts don't necessarily work in patronage. So it's not the price point of the event is not really one of the huge uh, variables that generates the maximum patronage, so to speak. Um, and one idea I had was to I I told and I don't know if event organizers are paying attention to this, but I actually told my patrons one by one. I went to them and said, if you can bring two people that you like to dance with, I can let you and them in all for half price as long as they are the opposite role of you. So one man can invite two women, for example. In the Bay Area, of course, men, let's say we use an example of men who lead and women who follow. But of course, there's different people can do different types of roles. As long as the person, if I invited you to come to my event, as long as the person that you like to is the opposite role of you, then we have a couple. We can create a couple situation where it's you and a partner you like, and you're both at my event now together. That's a way of modeling this thing about how to get people into your events together. So if I invited you, you invited two people that you like dancing with, and they could invite two more people, each person could invite two more that they like dancing with. All of a
Right.
sudden, we have a situation. All of a sudden, we have a situation where a number of dancers who like to dance with each other are at the same event. And in my case, that is the way the patronage works. That is the one problem that we have as organizers that seems to be very difficult to solve.
Interesting. So these are almost like
However,
attributes, features, do you lead? That's a feature of a dancer. So put all this together, it could be modeled. I'm sure it can be done.
it's interesting, but you see, here's the difficulty. What we had happened was people were not doing the inviting, and I also said that the catch, what was in it for them was half price entry, and the half price entry did not tilt the scales because people were not so concerned about whether they could get in for half the price. It was more about whether people would be willing to do the inviting to people that they liked.
Huh.
So that kind of thing, I would still say is a challenge. But yes, it could definitely. I wouldn't say it's a very interesting challenge to solve in social dance events, and I think that would be one of the things that we could consider. Think, how to solve this. What are ways to do that?
Okay. And if I wanted to access some data around events and how many people came, men, women, this, that, and the other, are you aware of any data sets that are already available, or is this going to be going to individual sites and mining information?
Yeah, I suppose the latter. In my case, I maintained a list of email addresses, and I'm finding more and more that people aren't relying on email so much. It's more social media, Instagram, and text messages seems to be a way to get
Hmm.
people's attention. And in terms of patron data, again, it was hard to do. I had a whole list of kind of box, pages with boxes in them, and I would just check a box each time somebody came. So I could probably come up with patronage numbers over the last few years, as to how my patronage changed as the years went by. But in terms of the actual makeup of the patrons, that's a bit more difficult to model. Again, how they dance, maybe their age group. My events mostly attracted people from an older age bracket. And I still think that tango is danced more among an older demographic, but it's changing very rapidly now. And one couldn't say so clearly anymore that it's only for older people.
Very interesting. So, of course, we don't have the data, but your intuition tells you that there is an opportunity to deploy machine learning to curate a hit event, basically.
Yes, and make reproducible results. Uh, and results tend to be often random with event organizers, but making reproducible results is something that's a very real world and I believe solvable problem.
Interesting. So let me very quickly, let me change topics a little bit. And how do you come up with your playlist when you're doing an event? Is it on the fly? You get a vibe check, whatever people like, you start playing that, or it's decided in advance, or how does that work?
That's the art of DJing, which is the second aspect of the modeling conversation we're getting into now. And the thing with DJing is it's an art, and the art of DJing is essentially to be able to pick a DJ very simply chooses the music for a dance party. And there's a whole number of strategies that are used for that. But essentially, the goal being the music is not boring.
Okay.
And how do you decide if music is not boring? It's danceable, but also it gives the person a chance to interpret and feel different types of music. So the styles of music have to go in and out of being very rhythmic, that really, really fast, and things that are lyrical that you can dance really slow to. And then there is the other component of dancing, which is dramatic. Essentially, if you have lots of fast movements, but the rhythm keeps changing during the song, and to be able to mix those styles of music effectively is basically what a DJ does.
Okay.
So in my case, I usually make a playlist of music before I go to the event. And depending on what the crowd is doing and how they're dancing or whether there's people on the floor, mainly the idea is for a DJ is how many people what percentage of the people, patronage that are in the event are dancing and are sitting out. And generally you want more people to dance to your music than to be sitting. And that's the most basic
Hmm.
concern with DJ.
And if you
And
see
there's a
that's
planning
not
strategy.
happening, you switch it up a bit. You get some other
Yeah, for
song.
example, you start the certain there's a few orchestras. There were orchestras that played in the golden age in the 30s, from the 30s to the 50s. And those orchestras have recordings that were remastered by many of these companies, record companies, over the years. So you play a certain orchestra's music for basically 3 or 4 songs together, which is essentially the
Hmm.
of music that a DJ plays before they change the style of music, which basically indicates you change your partner, you find another partner to dance. So that's 3 or 4 songs. And if you find that people are not dancing, you have to change the strategy for your next set of music that you play. You have to know whether to play faster or slower, or whether you need to get more lyrical or more rhythmic. And those things come with time and with going to many, many dance events.
Very interesting. So sounds like it's a very high human in the loop kind of thing that you have to constantly be evaluating what's going on and what you need to queue up and so on, right?
Yes, and from a data angle, again, that's again another thing really challenging, because if you need a lot of human intervention, is AI really the course of solution? Can DJing be solved by AI, for example? We're talking about data, and I think the art of DJing is actually more trainable by AI than the art of maximizing patronage, even though the equation of patronage seems more clear than the equation of music. However, I think that there is a set of data that already exists online or out there to train an AI model on, for example, Argentine tango music. And so I think there is a way to get, and one of the challenges is, could a DJ be done by AI? Could there be an AI DJ? And in this case, the training would depend on the set of music that we are dealing with, plus some technical factors such as key signatures. Well, BPM is another one, beats per minute, which is not often used in Argentine tango, but it is a technical way of measuring speed of a song. So there's a number of things that one can do, but I do agree that there is a lot of human intervention needed, because you would have to be able to, an AI engine would need to feel
Right.
what the people are doing. So
Or
how
there could be some computer vision type app that's watching whether people are dancing or sitting, and
Oh, that's
based
very
on
interesting.
real-time feedback, switches up the songs. I don't know
Oh,
how
how
real time
interesting.
it could be, but potentially could be done.
I don't know how well developed computer vision is, but there's some very interesting data challenges in both of these areas, the patronage aspect and the DJing aspect, that lend itself to quite a lot of introspection about
Yeah,
training.
yeah, absolutely. And lots to think about as aspiring data scientists, whether these problems can
Yes.
be solved. It doesn't seem obvious, it's not a obvious fit for this kind of a model, but we could definitely give it some thought. So let me ask you something else, moving away from data a little bit. So suppose somebody wanted to familiarize themselves with Tango and they know next to nothing about Tango. Where should they start?
Um, there's several sites. The iTunes Store is a great site. I got a lot of my music from eMusic, but essentially you want to look at Argentine tango from the golden age, and that's your that's the style of music I work with. And if
Okay,
you are specific, just like an AI today, if you're specific with your prompt, you can get the right answers. And what I look at is golden age, golden age traditional Argentine tango music.
and golden age once again is
Well,
1920s to the 50s, you said.
um, from the 30s to the 50s is considered to be the golden age of tango,
Okay,
as well as the golden age of swing, believe it or not. So it was kind of the same type of years. But golden age generally understood to be 30s to the 50s. Yes.
interesting. Final question, where do I get a jacket like that from?
Well, if you're a DJ of my repute, people just give you things. The crowd will throw things at you. But on the other hand, there's also Amazon. So, there's your hint.
Okay. DJ of your repute has a nicer ring to it. So maybe I'll.
Well, why not?
All right, Ashwin, this was great chatting.
Great.
We should do this again sometime.
Certainly, there's more to come. So thanks for having me on your show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.